All right. Looks like all right, looks like it just was able to go live again. And of course, when the live stream goes down, it then automatically repopulates us, my at least mine, to CNBC television. So I never watch CNBC, and
Are we live?
yeah, it looks like it's back live again.
Okay. If people can hear me, YouTube's repeatedly trying to shut us down. This is our third attempt to go live, and there's no reason for it. The stream health is fine. YouTube essentially just keeps shutting down our stream, and it makes absolutely no sense because all the health on the stream is fine. So basically, what was the error message you got there, Tim?
All right, I screenshotted the error message. Let me get back up to it. It says, there was a problem communicating with the YouTube Live servers. This may be a network issue, or you may not have access to YouTube Live. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, all we're talking about how Epstein was a Mossad, agent, and that the connections between him and Trump, the deep state, and bringing everything down. I don't know what they what could have been in there that those didn't want us talking about. But apparently,
It's infuriating. And YouTube right now, Tim, I'm not seeing our stream at all.
You know what? When the first time we went live, I had to refresh it like 15 times, and I was able to then see it from my phone, but I couldn't see it from the desktop until like 2 minutes into it. And so this is when we were.
Let me explain to everybody watching what this does to a channel when this happens. So essentially, it copies 3 versions of a video all from different spots, different places, and what happens when that happens is that it brings down the average viewership for the whole channel. And what happens when that happens is that we get like no views on future videos for like a week. It literally drags down our algorithm so badly that no one sees us. That's what happens when YouTube does this to us. So I'm furious about this because I've been fighting with YouTube for the last couple weeks over this issue, and they keep telling me it's not happening. And I keep telling them, yes, it is happening. We are watching it happen on a daily effing basis. They have cut us down 95% in monetization, so I have to sell everything I own to survive. I'm literally going homeless because of this, but because I have a passion for telling the truth. And on top of all of that, what's really annoying, it's not the money at all. It's the fact that we're not allowed to reach people. YouTube won't let us reach people. And that infuriates me because we cannot tell the truth. We have these pedophiles at Disney, these pedophiles covering up for all these monsters in Hollywood and Washington. People like Epstein getting blackmail on all these people. We have Weinstein. We have Woody Allen, as we were reporting before they shut us down. That's okay. It's okay for ABC News to cover that up. It's okay for the BBC to cover up Jimmy Savile, who raped hundreds of kids over decades, knowingly cover that up. But it's not okay for us to tell the truth. And that is where we're at. That's why we have now 32 people out of 138,000 people watching, because YouTube shut us down from 250 to 87 to now 32 people. This is our third attempt to go live. These are the people we're up against. These are the people we're fighting. This is a reason I tell the truth. This is a reason I get demonetized. And this is a reason why I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing at all costs. Because we have to deal with this bullcrap on a daily basis. And it just tells me why I'm fighting. Why we're doing this in the first place. They've just shocked our algorithm for the next week or so. So that we'll get half the views that we usually get.
And when it comes to
doing this 3 times.
And when it comes to computers, I mean, right now I've got a 32 gigabyte of RAM, and 8 gigabytes of a video card in here that's only doing the streaming. That has a 500 megabyte fiber cable going into my house. Have another 16 gigabyte RAM Mac that's just handling the Skype. And my computer is nowhere near maxed out. It's at like 25% CPU, like 10% GPU, like 30% memory. Nowhere near maxed out. Nowhere near like anywhere that would be causing this any sort of stress. I mean, so for the fact that like, all of a sudden we're talking about all these issues that they don't want us to talk about, and then boom, these streams are going down. So who knows? Maybe
look at it from this perspective, Tim. I mean, I've been through 3 laptops. One of my friends, one is my girlfriend's, one is my old one that crashed a while back ago because my other one crashed about 2 months ago, my good one. So I haven't been able to actually get my documentaries or any of my work done. And then on top of that, the other day or yesterday, we're trying to work this out to go live, and one isn't working. Then the other one stops working. This one starts restarting. So Tim starts trying to do things on his, and his suddenly starts restarting, even though he has a beast of a computer. And then I borrow my friend's laptop, which is an MSI, one of the fastest processing computers in the world. And then that one starts crashing and restarting the second I'm about to go live today. It was working last night when we were testing it, not today. This is just, it's so infuriating. Josh, I don't even want to go into news stories right now. I'm worried about going into news stories because the second I go into news stories right now, it's just going to shut us down again.
Well,
in
maybe
the middle of an article.
We Arbor Borealis Bear says, but Nixon made a phone call to the moon, so no problem. So, so let's just keep that in mind. And then we got another viewer, Daryl Nugget, says maybe you guys are too controversial. Maybe you guys are over the target, over the flack. Yeah, I mean, I think
Eddie says we need to get on ham radio, and I agree at this point. Man, it probably work out a lot better.
You can send Bitcoin. You can send Bitcoin through
Subscribe to my new channel, WAMcast, by the way, WAM space cast. It's linked below. Check those links below. Press like on this video if you haven't already. We got 52 people watching because people are tired of having to refresh and go back and go back and go back over and over again when this is happening. And guess what? Once this live stream's finished, no one's going to watch it. No one's going to watch it. Because
or they can't go back, or they can't even go back, because even though I'm the one that physically pressed go live from my computer, and then I go to the other computer, I'm on WAM, signed in as WAM, clicking refresh, and I can't even find the stream for like 2 minutes, and then I have to go to my phone. So I'm not screwing around on my phone, guys. I was going on my phone to see so I could find it on my phone, but then I couldn't find it on my computer for like 2 or 3 minutes, even though I was the one that pressed it, and I'm in the same network, the same everything, and it's just you know, it's like if I here I am searching for it, I know that it's live because I'm the one that pressed the button and I see that it's live, and I go out of my way to find it and I can't even find it. Then just imagine the person who's like, oh crap, the stream went down. They're getting some juicy stuff. Let me just go, not even juicy Smollett, but some real juicy stuff. We go in to get into that stuff, and then they can't even find it because they're thinking, okay, maybe they're gone. And then they go back on, and then all of a sudden, you know, we're dropped again. But yeah, it is frustrating. And
it looks like at any moment we might get dropped again because, Tim, there's no reason for us to be dropped in the first place. So literally, the second I start going into something, they're going to shut me down. And the whole idea is to make me lose my ambition for doing this. I believe this to be true. We've been dealing with this for years now. It's been getting worse with each month for the last 3 years, and in the last year, every single month I've made almost just around half of what I made the month before in monetization, and the last couple months it's been almost nothing. So we're basically going under right now, and we have to reach out to people and say, hey, can you help us out in any way you can? I mean, seriously, liking, sharing, going on Subscribestar, doing $1 a month, or Patreon $1 a month, or GoFundMe or something, because it's just really frustrating. GoFundMe looks bad because it looks like I made tens of thousands, like $14,000 on it, but the fact is that's over like 6 or 7 years that GoFundMe.
That's like below minimum wage if you actually go and you do the math and all that. If you take it, 14,000 over 6 years, that's not a good trade-off.
Most of it came in like 3.5, 4 years ago when I confronted Justin Trudeau in Canada. So no, it's really stressful for me. I'm just, you have to remember, I'm not doing this for money. I'm literally selling all of my things so that I can continue doing this on a regular basis going forward. It's important to me. I'm gonna go into new news articles here, but I have no idea how it's gonna work, and I have a really bad feeling that it's just gonna shut down the stream again.
And how is it when I go live from John on my channel off no prep, never having really even done this before, not a single issue over an hour? I mean, we're mainly talking about just all financial stuff, didn't get into quite the heavier topics we got into today.
Eileen Ann wrote in the chat here, yep, they unsubscribed me from you. I'm back. So not only are they shutting us down, they're unsubscribing people who are literally just watching from the channel. Like, it makes me furious. Go check in the description for my new channel, Whamcast. Find me on Podbean at Whamcast as well.
I see somebody also commented that minimalism is smart right now, and just by coincidence, one of like the top YouTube minimalist guys actually goes to my church. I didn't see him today, but I don't know, maybe he'd be somebody to potentially get on at some point, just by complete coincidence. But we want to get into we got Lebanon announces first default, and then we could take a look at stock futures.
Tim, let's go into oil. I'm go to the OPEC stories, and then I'll open it up from there, and then hopefully it'll work, and I'll be able to pull it out after and post it as a separate video. My God, this is annoying. All right.
All right, we got it, man.
All right, let me just get it up on my own here. And all right, give me a signal if anything goes down, Tim. Don't let me keep going if anything goes down.
I'll text you on Signal, so I'll give you an actual signal. So.
Just say it on Skype or so. Anyway, all right. Opening this up. As this CNBC article says, OPEC deal collapse sparks price war. $20 oil in 2020 is coming. And as this article goes into, scrolling down below the photo, it says experts are calling dramatically lower crude prices as major OPEC and non-OPEC producers prepare for an all-out price war in a sudden U-turn from previous attempts to support the oil markets as the new coronavirus hammers global demand. And I quote, $20 oil in 2020 is coming. Ali Kaderi, formerly Exxon senior Middle East advisor and now CEO of U.S.-based strategy firm Dragoman Ventures, wrote Sunday on Twitter, huge geopolitical implications, timely stimulus for net consumers, catastrophic for failing petro kleptocracies, Iraq, Iran, etc., may prove existential. 1-2 punch when paired with COVID-19. The comment came as oil prices are down 30% for the year and a day after Saudi Arabia announced massive discounts to its official selling prices for April. Plunging price forecasts are also coming amid reports of a possible increase in production by the OPEC kingpin from its current 9.7 million barrels per day, BPD, to more than 10 million barrels per day. And it shows this tweet here. Ali Kaderi says $20 oil in 2020 is coming. Huge geopolitical implications, timely stimulus for net consumers, catastrophic for failing petro kleptocracies, Iraq, Iran, etc. may prove existential 1-2 punch when paired with COVID-19. So I'm going to move on to the next article, also out of CNBC, that says Saudi Aramco shares fall below IPO price for first time. Gulf stocks plunge. In afternoon trading. The Abu Dhabi index fell 5.8%. Dubai's financial market general index was down 7.47%, and Kuwait's index had plunged by 10% at 1:30 p.m. Dubai time. Let's go to you, Tim. I want to hear your thoughts on this oil madness. Let's talk about seeing oil at $20. What do you think? Is this possible? What does this mean?
Well, the first thing is, I guess $20 is $20, but no. Anyways, with how all this is going down, isn't it very funny that when they were trying, they being the Saudis, were trying to do their Aramco IPO, that all of a sudden there was these drone strikes going on, and where was it? The whole Iranian thing was going on. That temporarily then drove the price of oil dramatically higher, which then helped out dramatically with the IPO price. So now that they've IPO'd and they've already been able to cash in on this IPO, now all of a sudden isn't a great time to then crash the oil price, and then that way you make a lot of your American competitors, especially people who've been fracking a lot of the shale oil stuff. And this is a problem that I've been talking, and believe me, I'm not some like big greeny guy over here that's just talking about how we need to go save the world and everything needs to be green. But I did see that there were some big problems when it came to fracking. Primarily, a lot of these companies, they would have tons and tons of debt they'd have to go take out. That debt was only basically able to be serviced if oil was above like $70, $80, $90 a barrel. So then what they do is these wells were only really a lot of these. I'm not an expert in shale oil, but my preliminary understanding of these was that a lot of these shale oil wells could not be, the amount of oil that you could suck out of them was a very short lifespan compared to a traditional oil well. So let's say you can only, extract oil. I'm just making up a number here. Let's say for 8 years, but then you go sell a 15-year bond, and then oops, you're bankrupt, and now you've extracted all these resources out, and now you've left a gigantic mess. And so I have not been a gigantic fan of this fracking and shale, expansion just because of that. And again, I'm not some leftist greeny, need to go save the world, and Greta Van Susteren type over here. It's just from a financial standpoint.
You mean Greta Thunberg?
Yeah.
Greta Van Susteren.
I don't even know who that is. I don't even know who that is, but who is?
That's well, she was on Fox News years ago.
Okay, all right, yeah, okay, all right. I guess I know who that. See, I'm actually glad that I don't. I'm actually glad that I messed it up and didn't know who they were. But yeah, how fitting though is it that when it benefits Saudis to have the price of oil high, boom, we get high oil, which was also right around the time all this whole repo madness started. So that was literally the same day. So I think it was September 16th or 17th. You had that drone strike that happened. It got blamed on, the whole Iran Saudi thing. It got blamed on that. That was the same time that the oil price started spiking. Same time that the repo market started breaking down, where all of a sudden the banks were getting charged 10% overnight to borrow money. Same day. So it's very funny that these happen on the exact same time frame of things. But right. It is but interesting that right when it benefits Saudi to have the price of oil high, they get high oil, and right when it benefits them to have it low and consolidate through all their enemies, then they start pumping more to then be able to buy up their competitors at lower rates. I mean, that's just sort of what I think at a quick glance of what's going on, but who the heck knows.
How do you think this is going to affect the average consumer the most? I mean, obviously cheap gas prices aren't the worst thing in the world.
Well, no, like in 2008, which, great time for me to graduate college. So I guess I am dating myself. So I remember I graduated and I was living in upstate New York, and here I am, taking a commission financial advisor sales job and making nothing. And, gas was about like $4.30 a gallon. And that was headed into the financial crisis. And then even as we're like already into the financial crisis, I remember gas was already at $4. And so this could be another one of those moves that could actually keep this whole debt carousel going round and round and round further, because this then helps out the average consumer, because one of the biggest things they spend money on, let's say you're poor and you've got to drive a certain amount every month, because you got to drop your kids off of school, you got to go to work, all blah 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 blah, and now the price of oil is a very big fixed cost for a lot of people. And now if you see that fixed cost drop, and then, that could be something that could help, save the GDP, along with people buying toilet paper at Costco and big box retailers. So isn't that funny that, people basically prepping now is like the only thing that's really, saving the economy, so to speak. But I do see this being one other move that then keeps this whole, debt carousel spinning round and round and round even further.
Saudi Arabia doesn't seem super sustainable to me long term. Obviously, you have these major deals between these countries: China, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Russia, Iran, whatever you might. I mean, there's major coalitions worldwide, and Saudi Arabia is heavily involved in a lot of these coalitions. You see that in Canada as well. Huge arms deals and huge monopolization by other countries, who, by the way, will steal people's money and then spend more money sending money over to Saudi Arabia than they'll spend on homeless people on the streets, but the people that they put there in the first place. But I mean, I don't know. Going forward, do you think how sustainable do you find the Saudi Arabian empire, Tim? I mean, I feel like they're losing relevance, especially losing popularity from both sides of the aisle these days.
Well, wasn't there another big shakeup in the royal family just recently? I've only seen headlines, so I'm not an expert in that. But it does appear that even the Saudi royals even know that the gig is sort of up, because I think you've seen a big diversification play into making a big tourist area. Like, I don't know if they want to turn Saudi Arabia into like a big Disney World or sort of.
Well, they started opening up a lot of ancient sites in Saudi Arabia after there's a shakeup within the family. Multiple people disappeared, were imprisoned, died. Then obviously we remember the Khashoggi situation. And a bunch of princes were recently rounded up and questioned. I'm not sure what's really happening there. It's the House of Saud in Saudi Arabia, of course. And honestly, I'm just excited to see what happens next, because Saudi Arabia has been implicated in 9/11 alongside the U.S. government, obviously. And I think it's about time that they're held somewhat accountable. It's amazing how little people seem to care about one of the most dangerous countries in the world as far as individual freedoms and, all these feminists that go on in the United States and don't talk at all about the massive problem with women's rights in a place like Saudi Arabia, gays thrown from buildings. I mean, like, why do we just turn a blind eye? Oh, right, sponsors, money. It's always about that. You see that in Hollywood. Hollywood decides what we think about and what we talk about, though. us in independent media do our best to try to shake that up a bit. But nonetheless,
we're getting into like Amber Lyon of CNN. Was it Qatar?
I definitely remember Amber Lyon. I talked with her years ago. She's been missing in action for years, but yeah, she was on CNN and she called out Bahrain. Basically CNN had a deal with the Bahrain government, and they covered up the whole story where it was just absolutely disgusting what the Bahrain government was doing to activists over there. But anyway, we'll get into this issue further in the future. There's a lot to talk about on the issue of Saudi Arabia, lots to talk about in the stock market, lots to talk about with oil. So stay tuned for more, guys. And now we're gonna get to the chat. B Native says this guy Josh is awesome. Well, thank you very much. It's been a tough day today, B. It's been an issue trying to get around these technical glitches. They'll shut us down over Jeffrey Epstein stories, that's for sure. This is our third attempt to be live and have our news show. And what happens, the worst part of it is that when it gets replayed later, no one sees it. And no one's going to watch it because half of the videos are halfway through a sentence. Like if a video just starts halfway through a sentence, no one's going to watch it. I can tell you that now. So it's going to affect our algorithm going forward. But so be it. That's the way it is. This is what we got to deal with on YouTube. We try to just plow forward. This is why we're on float.app. Everyone should go find us on float.app. It's below my name on the screen, flote.app/Josh Sigurdson. You could also find at The Liberty Advisor on Float, as well as at WAM, W-A-M. And you can subscribe to our channel, Wamcast, which I'll be putting podcasts on, which you'll also be able to find on Podbean. And we're on Instagram.
And
Twitter,
Podbean will send it out to all the other places too, so we'll get that set up soon. We're blast out to everybody. We do have someone who did find this by way of Sam Tripoli's Tinfoil Hat podcast. So you've got Ja L says Josh Sigurdson gives me the same. You're gonna laugh about this one. Gives me the same vibe as Luke Radowski. Both I found out from Sam Tripoli from Tinfoil Hat. The vibe is the people just talking about the most recently promoted topic. So. Yeah, so it is probably an honor to be in the same category as Luke Radowski. At least I don't know how that's gonna sit with you.
Well, I mean, I always appreciate seeing new people come in, and I'm always happy to. I'm not sure what he means by the most recently promoted topic, but nonetheless, we're the news, and we got to talk about all the news and try to give the alternative spin on
like
it.
Coronavirus. You could call coronavirus like a media implanted, selected topic, and we're talking about it. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, it is, and mostly because it's a bioweapon created by governments to try and kill off as many people as possible. And so, I mean, I think a lot of these issues are that, we see these stories up in the news a lot. I try to avoid the election issue as much as possible. I ask Tim, I'm like, every time he's like, hey, we should do this on this topic regarding the election. I'm like, no. I hate politics. I'm an anarchist, obviously. But with that said, I am really proud of having been able to be on Tinfoil Hat podcast, and it's an awesome show. They do great work. Sam Tripoli has done awesome work. People don't realize that Sam Tripoli has made the careers of countless comics, and no one gives him the credit that he deserves on that. So, it was great being on his show. And as for that, I'm glad it was a comment that didn't just say, Josh is a shill. It's always nice to get the non-shill comments. We got a whole bunch of comments coming in. Chad Meyer says, Josh, any chance you talked to Ben Davidson? I haven't talked with them yet. I'm definitely going to be reaching out right away. We're just ending a schedule of a bunch of live shows and videos right now. Obviously, I'm going to take a few days off from the live stream news show. I think we need to figure out a few issues and glitches, and I need a new laptop really badly because I can't function and do things properly. But we're going to be pumping out content like crazy right away. I got interviews coming up, set up right away. And I'm also at the end of the month, thanks to a donor, the same guy who sent me to Turkey, I'm going to be exploring the pyramids of Tikal and exploring some other stuff in Guatemala. So hope for the best. I think the jungle should cure any potential coronavirus. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll definitely be reaching out to Ben Davidson. Thank you, Chad. And again, anyone that gives super chats, I really appreciate it. Honestly, right now we're just struggling a lot, and we're just trying to stay alive. Pressing like on the video helps a lot. It's been a frustrating couple of days, period. Let's see. Gary K says, Guys, please donate to help Josh if you can. He really needs the help. Smash the like button, sub, share. Jerry K, absolutely. I appreciate that. Thanks, man. Yeah, hitting the like button helps. And, people keep getting unsubscribed. And one thing I've noticed is every time I do these live streams, I lose like 20 subscribers, and I don't think it's natural, honestly, because we can repost the same video from the live stream and the subscribers will go up. But when I do live streams, people just randomly get unsubscribed at random from our channel, and it's really frustrating. We just saw someone earlier commenting in the chat about it, how they were they were watching and then it got shut off. The stream got shut off for a second time in a row, and they checked and they were unsubscribed. I mean,
we've almost got half an hour now. Let's not jinx it over here of attempt number 3. And I will say thank you to everyone who did subscribe over to my channel. I think yesterday we got about 30 new subscribers. Pushed us over 500, so definitely appreciate that. I'm not sure what we're sitting at today, but it went from like 497 to 520 something. So definitely appreciate everyone who went over there, because who knows, in the future it might have to go live from over there if it keeps dropping us randomly on this one. But actually, I'm looking at Zero Hedge right now, and an article just came out, one that we didn't have before. Not to jump around, but do you mind if I go into there's an article
here? Let me open it up on my computer here, Tim. Zero Hedge article. What's it called?
Well, it's this is the most frightening disease I've ever encountered in my career.
Oh yeah, that's been up for a few hours.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of that. So this guy has also capitalizes on fear mongering too. I remember him talking or speaking around Ebola, saying something similar. Oh my God, Peter.
He goes, and this includes Ebola as well. But what gets me is I feel like the Ebola scare was not nearly as hyped up as this one. And personally, isn't the death rate from getting Ebola? I mean, that sounded like a lot worse potential disease of you're bleeding out of all the orifices.
I actually disagree on that. So during Ebola, I was covering it at the time back in 2014, and people forget, because the weird thing about the news cycle is the second something's no longer in the news, they just shut it off. And the Vegas shooting is a good example. I'm here in Vegas, and there's a mass shooting, it's the biggest one in history, they say, and then suddenly within literally a week, it's no longer in the news cycle, and people forget about it. That's what it's a psychological warfare, I think. And back in 2014, what happened with Ebola?
Which Sam Tripoli has a great show on the Vegas shooting, if you guys want to go back in terms of helicopters and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, so Ebola in 2014, it had a death rate of about 60 to 90% an average, which you have to bounce back and forth between third world and first world, obviously. But what was interesting about that was it mostly affected the third world, unlike the coronavirus, which is mostly affecting the first world and not really affecting the third world that much. And also, what happened though was there's a media blitz where these so-called journalists were chasing people in the streets who they said might have had contact with the person who had contact with the person who had contact with someone who had Ebola. And they were videotaping people eating dinner through their windows. There's a girl that was riding her bike who was a nurse who at one point handled this person a week or 2 weeks earlier and obviously didn't have Ebola. And they're chasing her down the street, 50 of them. And these reporters were telling us that we're supposed to be scared of this woman that's riding her bike, that she might have Ebola. Meanwhile, she had no symptoms, and all these news reporters had no gloves on, had no masks on, were touching her and jumping down the street, chasing her with a camera. It got so over the top. We were all told that we were going to die immediately and that we had to prepare for the worst. I remember the panic was insane. Now, this is kind of getting to the point. I think within the next week, it'll definitely surpass Ebola as far as the panic goes. Obviously, a lot of people aren't as panicked about corona because it's not as deadly of an illness, but it's spreading faster. It's more easily able to be spread. And obviously, we have a lot of evidence that we have a bioweapon in effect here. Matt Spence says, "Hey, Josh." Hello to you, Matt. B Native says, "High dose of vitamin C and food-grade hydrogen peroxide heals most diseases. I have no fear." Yeah, I don't think people should be in fear, but people should certainly be prepared. And this is just another heads up and red flag that we need to be healthier as people. We need to be working harder to be a healthier human being rather than succumbing to the fast food diets and the lack of health that we see today, and the pharmaceutical industry, which is just absolutely criminal and terrible. We definitely need to be better as far as working on our own health. I don't know, Tim. Are you worried about getting coronavirus?
No, as a matter of fact, I just booked plane tickets yesterday to head over to Austin in May. So I was able to get those tickets for $171 round trip. So for me, I'm looking at this as an opportunity, but not everybody's looking at it as an opportunity, because there's another Zero Hedge article stating that global air traffic set for worst year on record, and it shows this is the biggest decline they've ever had. There's been over 200,000 flights canceled. But for me, I'm taking colloidal silver almost every day. My wife's like, well, my doctor didn't tell me that colloidal silver was safe to take. So I'm like, of course your doctor is not going to tell you that. And then she's like looking into it. She's like, oh, I heard that you're going to turn like silver or like a tin color if you take it all the time.
Yeah,
and
if you chug it.
I'm like, okay, I'm not, I'm not gonna turn into the Tin Man over here. Yeah.
Colloidal silver has been hit and miss for me over the years, Tim. I mean, half the time it works, half the time it doesn't.
Not medical advice. Not medical. Most of the time, I have to say not financial advice, not medical advice. But
yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't hurt to take all possible options, and I think. I mean, I've looked at the pharmaceutical industry, and most of it just takes care of symptoms and not the actual problem. I have taken antibiotics over the years multiple times because they actually have saved my life. But you have to do a risk factor analysis and decide which is more risky, of pneumonia or the antibiotics. Well, obviously pneumonia is more risky than the antibiotics, so you take them, you become more unhealthy, then you take certain things to try and aid the problems of taking antibiotics. And again, people are going to disagree with me on that, but it saved my life on multiple occasions. I don't mess around with natural stuff when it comes to, I take it, but I don't mess around with it solely when I have something like pneumonia, which I get a lot because of a doctor screwing me over in 2012 and telling me I had a cold for a month and a half. 4 of them in a row told me I had a cold for a month and a half, only for me to find out after a month and a half that I had pneumonia and it was about to spread to my blood and I could die at any moment. So I'm like, oh, great. So I caused scar tissue in my lungs for life. So I get a lung infection every single year because of it. I'm looking into ways to fix that. But yeah, I mean, we need to be healthier people, and we need to be looking into all the different vitamins and the natural supplements. Clive DeCarl has a lot of cool stuff on that himself, who's interesting guy who looks into a lot of the alternative health stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's important that we don't just follow what the government tells us. So the government wants us to be unhealthy. The government wants us to be weak and stupid and subservient.
Yeah, the government didn't tell me that this was safe to do. So, I think even like the the EPA or whoever is in charge of these, or CDC, says everyone should have 3 days worth of food. 3 days. Like, what's 3 days going to get you? I guess it gets you 3 days. But what do you do on day 4? You start.
I do kind of want to go to Wuhan, but I can't. They won't let me. The government. And on top of that, I just have too many things going on. I don't have the money to go there. But it is interesting because I am planning to move overseas next year to save money, save most of my money. I'm going to be nomadic for a year or so, maybe 2 years. And I'm looking at flights and I'm like, holy, you know what? Like, I'm looking at these flights. It's like, it's crazy how cheap it is. And I'm like, before this fear dies down, I got to get on booking some flights here. Because like every day I refresh Google Flights and the flights are like another 10% cheaper, 10% cheaper. They're doing whatever they can. And all these economy airlines are actually going bankrupt right now. Level Airlines is flying people from Vegas to Paris for $190 non-stop. It's crazy. But what happened was it was too cheap and they went under. Or they didn't go under. They stopped doing that flight, and they stopped doing the flight from LA to Barcelona. They've settled for San Francisco to Barcelona now. And it's just like they had to cut down on their flights dramatically. It sucks because I was going to use that. So I'm not trusting the budget airlines. I'm going to trust these big airlines that are lowering their price dramatically. And I'm seeing for one person $400 to fly direct to Jakarta, Indonesia. I mean, that's like a 14-15 hour flight. It's like it's above Australia, guys. It's a crazy flight from Las Vegas to Jakarta, Indonesia. $400 a person. So I mean, we're at a point in time like we've never seen before with airlines. I mean, not since I can't even remember this ever being the case, other than not factoring in inflation, I guess.
And then what's the highest price of the airline ticket? I mean, I think yesterday my ticket was like $170, and probably about $70 of it was various taxes and 9/11 fees and security fee, this and that. And so you take a look at it, the airline's at $100. The government's making out like bandits. They're the ones getting like between $50 and $70, I want to say. And it just really struck me at like, okay, at least the government's still making money off of all this.
Oh, I know the tax is always like double the actual ticket price. It's so criminal. It's so much extortion. Make sure to press like on this video if you haven't already, guys. And I'm just thinking like I want to get out of here because I need to, because YouTube has shut me down so much that I can't like function anymore financially. And I'm just thinking I'm going to be moving overseas, but I have to wait till August. I so badly want to go now, and I can't because I have a house that I have to get off the rent of. I got to.
And you don't want to stay around for the Vegas 110-degree summers. You come down here with me, Josh. It might be 5 degrees warmer than Vegas, but
I'm going to Kiev, Ukraine, man. I'm going to Kiev, Ukraine, Tbilisi, Georgia, the country of Georgia, of course, and then Malta, which isn't too shabby in the winter.
You'll also be going to Georgia, the actual Georgia, for G.R. Griffin's Red Pill.
G.R. Griffin's Red Pill Expo 2020.
Which I was trying to. I was looking at flights. I was looking at flights for that yesterday too. I wasn't really sure where to fly into for that.
I'm not sure. I'm honestly concerned because everyone is talking about potentially canceling these events because people might not fly. They canceled South by Southwest. They're talking about shutting down all the major attractions and theme parks and everything. Though they keep saying they're going to do that. They've only done it in Asia so far. And I'm honestly, I'm concerned because obviously the Red Pill Expo, J.Edward Griffin is 88 years old. He's probably going to survive the coronavirus if he gets it, honestly, but most old people won't. But I'm concerned about a lot of the people that come out to his events and everything. It's going to be at Jekyll Island, Georgia. You can use promo code WAM, W-A-M, to save money on your tickets at redpillexpo.org.
You and John are speaking, so...
Yeah, both John and I are speaking. John's speaking about the economy. I'm speaking about, get this, ancient civilizations at the original clubhouse on Jekyll Island where the Federal Reserve was created. I never thought I'd say that. J. Edward Griffin called me about 2 weeks ago frantically at like 10 p.m. He's like, Josh, I've been watching your documentaries on ancient civilizations, and I now think it's the most important situation, the most important topic that we face today. And we need to talk about this. Can you please talk about this? Can you show your documentary live or whatever? And I'm like, well, I don't want to, but I guess, sure. I hate talking at events. It's not nerves. I hate talking at events. I prefer talking to you guys over the internet and getting shut down by YouTube and all that kind of stuff. I'm a sucker for punishment. But, yeah, I mean, by the way, if we were to live stream to other sites, Tim, this whole shutting down multiple times wouldn't have been a problem. We should definitely do that next time.
All right, well, we need to get you set up on the restream, and that would make it really easy. So we can talk about that offline, so we can get in touch with that.
But yeah, let's bring up Zero Hedge on the screen. What's that?
Yeah, because I've got to do another podcast with Kirk at some point on his. But yeah, so I've got Zero Hedge, just the homepage pulled up right now. Actually, I think I'm already scrolled through the whole first page. Okay, I've got just Zero Hedge.
I just like how Peter Schiff, Fed's response to coronavirus is just delaying the day of reckoning. True.
Yeah,
but that's always the case with the Fed. The Fed is always doing that. Confused Biden calls himself Obama Biden and says we can only re-elect Donald Trump.
No, is it Biden Bama? Biden Bama is what he.
Biden Bama.
It's like the gaffe of the day over here.
Oh God, he has like 6 gaffes a day these days.
And I don't know if we probably don't want to play this in case they end up fair using us or something. But I'm sure. Yeah, and if you guys have not seen the Declaration of Independence one, absolutely hilarious. I mean, whatever you be drinking anything if you end up watching that clip, because you will spit it out from laughter. I'm just giving you guys a fair warning right now.
Heads up, by the way, Chad Myers sent $4.99 in the super chat. Thanks, Chad. That's awesome. He says bladderwrack, sea moss, black pepper oil, cayenne pepper, holistic healing, and raw foods. Just wanted to suggest a few things. Thanks for the work. And thank you, Chad. Again, you are...
All right, looks like Josh may have froze. His Skype session is frozen right now, so I guess we'll head over to me until Josh. I can see his face moving around in the background again. You there, Josh? Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah.
All right.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, it looks like your Skype frozen us for a little bit, so I took over for 5 seconds.
Okay, but can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
like T-Mobile guy now. Can you hear me now? So I really want to thank Chad for the super chat. It means a lot. I really appreciate it. That's literally the money I've made today. All the money I've made today. So pressing like on the video helps, sharing the video, and of course sending those super chats. It means a lot. So thank you so much, Chad. Again, you are. I mean, all of you guys that help out in any way you can really are the heartbeat that keeps this movement going up against these criminals that we're fighting and these mainstream propagandists that we're dealing with on a daily basis. So again, I really appreciate the help. It means a lot. Of course, everyone can check the links below if you want to help out any way you can, and hitting that like button and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, oh man, we are, I guess, running out of time here. Tim has to do a show. Make sure to check back more throughout the next 24 hours. We've got lots more videos coming. Bookmark the page. Check regularly to see if you've been subscribed or unsubscribed or whatever, because they unsubscribe a lot of people from us. We are literally like at our end point here. I can't even... I'm having a hard time dealing with it as far as just like keeping myself, calm and collected.
Well, I did mention this yesterday that basically the amount of money that Josh is making off YouTube right now is less than what my healthcare bill is. For my not healthcare bill, my insurance premium for family of 4 actually is more than what Josh's YouTube income has been dragged down to. It used to be almost, probably more than 10x what it currently is right now, but they've completely stymied everyone in independent media, and it doesn't take a whole lot. I mean, $5 here or there. I mean, if there was like literally, like 100 people just put in, $5. I mean, that would just be tremendous.
A dollar is a dollar.
Yeah, a dollar is a dollar, as we're saying over here. But did you want to get into the Lebanon defaulting article and some of the other?
If you got time, Tim, let's do it. As long as I'm not going to cut out.
Yeah, let's do it. And we've got you up, not cutting out. So I'll go to the screen right now.
All right, let's do this. And if we cut out, that'll be it for the day, guys. Just share it. We're not going to do it again if it cuts out.
All right, we're at 40 minutes with no cutting out. 41 minutes. So okay, knock on
wood. This is balsa wood. It's not even real. Anyway, let's get to this. As the Zero Hedge article says, Lebanon announces default on $1.2 billion debt payment in historical first. And as this article goes into, Lebanon announced Saturday it will default on its Eurobond debt for the first time in its history. The protest-racked country has seen a recent change in government, banks opened for merely about half of the past few months, strict controls on hard currency withdrawals and transfers abroad amid a liquidity crisis, a plummeting Lebanese lira since October, a run on dollars, and crushing public debt, which has lately blown up to nearly 170% in its gross domestic product, now about $89.5 billion. Prime Minister Hassan Diab confirmed in public statements the bond payment of $1.2 billion due on Monday will not be paid. The debt has become bigger than Lebanon can bear and bigger than the ability of the Lebanese to meet interest payments, he said in a televised address. And I quote, "We are paying the price for the mistakes of the past years. Must we bequeath them to our children?" And as it continues below the photo here, it says, the broader crisis is being widely described as the worst and most potentially destabilizing disaster since the 1975-90 Civil War. It also means that the country's bond, which mature on Monday and which last traded at a price of 57 cents on the dollar, or roughly 8,000% YTM, won't be repaid. And you could see the chart there. Look at that spike, guys. Man, that's just absolutely crazy. Continuing on, it says local banks, which own some of the Eurobonds set to mature on March 9th, have long argued against a default, but clients also fear the continued rapid depletion of their savings, Diab appearing to respond not only to the people in the streets, but to criticisms from the West centered on the Mediterranean nations' decades of state corruption, pledged to continue negotiations to restructure the country's debt with all creditors in a manner consistent with the national interest. And I quote, How can we pay creditors abroad when the Lebanese cannot get their money from their bank accounts? Diab questioned, referencing controversial emergency measures banks have enacted since the start of the year, which in most places has limited account holders to withdrawing a mere $200 a week. The Lebanese had lived a dream that was a delusion, as though things were just fine while Lebanon was drowning in more debt, he said further. The domestic divide on the first ever default, which didn't even occur during the Civil War period, is further described as follows, and I quote, well, it says here, according to Marwan Barakat, head of research at Bank Audi, Lebanese banks owned $12.7 billion of the country's outstanding $30 billion euro bonds as of the end of January. The central bank held $5.7 billion and the remainder was owned by foreign creditors, he said. According to local media reports, Lebanese banks have recently sold a chunk of their Eurobonds to foreign lenders. Anti-government demonstrators who have remained on the streets since October have lobbied against repayment, fearing a depletion of reserves could further limit access to their savings. And in one of the more deeply alarming moments of his speech, Diab, who's only been prime minister since January after the former government stepped down, cited World Bank figures forecasting that over 40% of the population could soon enter poverty. And Monday's default, it will be even sooner. We're going to go to Tim for this. Tim, I wanted to hear your thoughts on this. Obviously, Lebanon has been going through a lot of tough times lately as far as issues with civil rights and, people rising up like we've seen in many countries around the world, obviously stymied to a great degree by this coronavirus fear. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on Lebanon. Obviously, they've been through quite a few crises over the years. What do you think?
Well, Lebanon's big problem is that they do not have the world reserve currency, so they can't just print money out of thin air. And so, I mean, if you read the sentence, the debt has become bigger than Lebanon can bear and bigger than the ability of the Lebanese to meet their interest payments. And their debt is chicken, compared to what we have. I mean, their debt is like what we rack up in like 3 seconds. And so, I mean, you take a look at this and all of a sudden, they've got a gigantic problem on their hand. And oh, by the way, if you were to have a Japanese or one of their bonds just, a few months ago, everything was riding fine, but it's always fine until the moment it's not fine. And so that's what, is going to go on in America, that everything's going to be fine. I mean, literally people right now are paying for their bonds. I mean, if I go over, let me just refresh the page over here and go to my screen over here. So right now we're taking a look at different, actually I guess we're taking a look at stock market indices, but yeah, we've got the 10-year US Treasury bond trading at 0.77%. And then you got the 30-year trading at 1.3%. And so if you are dumb enough to buy a 1.3% 30-year bond, in my opinion, you deserve to get what is happening to you. And what people need to understand is that how the rates of bonds work inside of a portfolio. So if you are in a bond fund, if you have Right now, you're 55 years old, you're 55 to 65, your advisor or yourself, you probably have about 40% in bonds. Maybe not our listeners, but just in general, have about 40% in bonds. Let's say you've got $1 million 10-year bond. Technically, it's duration, not the maturity, but anyways, that's over most people's heads. But let's say you've got a 10-year bond. This is going to work like a teeter-totter. So how this works is if the rate goes up, so let's say the rate goes up 1%, so underlying rates go 1%. Now the underlying value of your bond goes down by 10%. So if it goes up by 2%, now it then goes down by 20%. Now, if you have a 30-year bond and rates go up just 1%, the underlying value of your bond would then go down by 30%. So if literally the rates go up by 3%, they would technically crater by over 90% because of compounding. And then now, yeah, you technically wouldn't have lost your money because you're getting your 1.3% per year. So okay, what is that? You're getting $13,000 per year. And then so after 30 years, you get your money back plus that $13,000 per year. But by then, all the horses would have left the barn and your $1 million would have bought you absolutely nothing, and you're going to be absolutely wrecked. And that's something that I've seen that, I mean, it's something that we had actually talked about when Tom Hegna came on the show over a year ago. And that was my first ever interview. And I talked way too much and I apologize for that. But you guys go back and listen to that one because that information, I think it was actually titled something along the lines of why rates are or maybe on my channel it was titled differently, but I think on my channel it was titled why rates are staying low forever. And this is right as like the hysteria of everyone thinking rates are going to keep going up forever. And this is not to take a victory lap. It's that he was one of the top guys in the country when it comes to different, the areas that he's in. And here we are, detailing what is actually going on over a year ago. This is probably 15 months ago, coming out with this. But then we're also talking about the solutions. And then if you are in bonds, there's better things you could be doing. And at the end of it, there's a whole little animation. So I would recommend people would go back and check that out, because that video is still just as pertinent today as it was 15 months ago. But yeah, if you're buying a 1.3% 30-year bond, and who's even buying it? It's probably the Federal Reserve and other governments that are buying these bonds to begin with. And then, as we pointed out yesterday, we had Boston Fed President Rosengren saying that the Fed or other facilities associated with the Fed should start buying stocks. I mean, this is like the complete end game, is that it wasn't enough that they're buying all the debt. Now they want to buy the stocks, because we're in a managed fake BS economy where all they're really trying to do to prop things up is tout how great the stock market is, or tout how great the unemployment rate is, or tout how great inflation is, when they lie about all this data. So I mean, not to beat a dead horse when it gets to all this stuff, but I mean, if you can distort what the inflation rate is. So let's say maybe what I should do now is actually just go to shadowstats.com. So if you could actually just go and anyone can go there for themselves. John Williams. Actually, I have been in talks with John to get him on the show. But you can go here, go to inflation rate, and then what you can actually see is how the government, how they price what inflation would be today based upon how they calculated it in the 80s. And how they calculated it based in the 80s would be right around 10% today. So maybe all the toilet paper buying helped push it back over 10%. Then you go back to, they decided in the 90s that we needed to regain things again. And so if you go by 90s inflation rates, you're looking at 6%. And so how they rig these things is, let's say you used to buy steaks, and now you're buying hot dogs, and then they put the price of the hot dogs in, not the price of the steak. Or I just, was just at the store with my daughters, and we're buying, a Powerade or a little apple juice for them. And, the size of it, shrinkflation is way smaller.
Yeah, so it's a difference between spam and a filet mignon. I mean, it's one thing I can't help but think. You mentioned shrinkflation, and it's very similar to what we saw in ancient Rome. We saw coin clipping in ancient Rome. They can't get away with coin clipping anymore. Besides, it's 97% cashless today anyway. But they can't get away with coin clipping anymore. So what do? They just pull down portion sizes dramatically. Mike Maloney goes into that in depth in one of his videos, and we did it in our video on the fall of empires, and which I filmed in Rome, showing the comparisons between Rome and current day the United States empire, and showing, I filmed it in front of the ancient Roman treasury where they clip the coins. But they clip the coins. Now we have this lack of portion. So you see at the bottom of a bottle, you could practically put your whole hand at the bottom of a bottle. Even wine now. I'm noticing bottles of wine you could stick your hand into like crazy. They say it's easier to pour. It's like, no, this is shrinkflation. You're literally shrinking the size. The chip bags are all air. They barely have any chips in them. The small versions of the same brand of chips, same kind of chips, has almost the same amount of chips in it as a big bag. I mean, that's in order to get away with this massive amount of inflation that we're dealing with, that they're trying to hide and cover up. Which, again, you point out John Williams Shadow Stats, and that's exactly where you find all this evidence of them judging it by the 1980 standards on that site, and then you compare it to what the Fed is saying, which is complete nonsense. What do they say about 2.5%, Tim?
Yeah, and then the other thing is, this then ties into GDP. So let's say the GDP was growing at, let's say 6%. I think right now it's technically growing at 4%. But then if inflation is growing at 2%, you take the 4 minus the 2, so the GDP comes at 2, which even that would be probably a highball estimate for right now. But let's say GDP was really growing at 6, or let's just take the 80s number. Let's say it's really growing at 10. But then, the inflation was growing at 10. But you still have the GDP growing by 4, but inflation is growing by 10. The economy would now be contracting by 6%, not instead of this BS, growing between like 1 to 2 that they have now. So even that 1 to 2 is all games, artificial. I actually wrote an 18-page, I would call it like a little booklet or pamphlet on that. I could have made it 100 pages or 200 if I wanted to. But if you guys wanted to text Liberty Advisor, one word, I think if you text 2 words, it goes like Liberty Mutual or something. But text it one word to the number is 71441. And if you guys already know this stuff, great. Give it to your friends, give it to your family members, because this is not a left-right issue. This issue affects everybody. It's just absolutely pissing me off knowing how they do all this stuff. And so there's more ways to rig the GDP numbers. There's more ways to rig the unemployment numbers. I mean, all this stuff is artificial. And we'll have John Williams on soon. I've been emailing him back and forth, trying to get him on. It's been a little while. So yeah, we'll get John on, because he's just an absolute wealth of information. But yeah, I mean, take a look at all these different treasury yields, all the way down the curve. It's just absolutely ridiculous. The only one that's above 1% right now is the 20-year, which is actually inverted from the 30-year, which is something.
Tim, I want to ask, have we ever seen anything like this ever before in history worldwide?
But this is actually the lowest the 10-year has ever been. And so why is this so low when we're supposedly in the greatest economy in the history of the world? And so this is the lowest. This is lower than what it was in the financial crisis. And mind you, we had talked a little while ago about how during the financial crisis, the start of it, the gas was at like over $4 a gallon, at least where I was at in upstate New York. And so now, gas, I don't know where it's coming in around the country, but you guys, probably most people are probably under $3. Some people are probably closer to 2, maybe even starting to dip below 2, depending on how much theft you have in your jurisdiction. And I do see one of the comments here asks if I know anything about Bill Gates investing into vaccine companies, and I have seen quite a bit of that. But we have seen Bill Gates make certain statements. It was sort of like a TED talk he did a few years ago where he said, we need to get CO2 down to 0, and this is not like, and I'm paraphrasing here, he goes, this is not like you're driving underneath a bridge that's 10 feet tall and you've got an 11-foot truck and you just need to lower it by 1.5 feet to smooth underneath it. You need to bring it all the way down to 0. And then he shows P for people in the equation. He's like, and one of these has to get pretty low to 0 or 0. And then everyone's laughing because they're just all loving liberals, and it's okay if you're Bill Gates and you do it. And he's also joked around like, hey, if we don't give grandma her care, then we can go afford to pay teachers more money. But if
I think that's.
But where I wanted to go, Denny. But then what does he? But then what does he say at the end of it? What does he say at the very end of it? He says, if we do a good job with the vaccines, the healthcare, and the food, then maybe we can. And I forgot the exact number he used, but he said we can help lower Earth's population. That's his quote, literally on video. No conspiracy theory. No one making it up. Yeah, I guess if we're getting back to Lebanon, maybe this is just the first, canary in the coal mine to happen, because they're not the only ones who are in trouble. It's just about every single place in the world. Who is one of America's biggest, creditors? For a while, it was actually the Federal Reserve, and then they thought that they had the gall to actually be the largest seller of bonds, and yeah, that lasted about 2 months before they realized that couldn't happen. And then who's the second? It bounces between China and Japan. Well, we're in a trade war with China. They've got their massive programs going on.
China.
China. Their problems are huge. And then you've got Japan, which Japan is, I believe, is the most indebted first world country in the world. So our 3 biggest people lending us money are the Federal Reserve, which is AKA ourself, which isn't really ourself because it's a whole private banking conglomeration. Yeah, that we know about that. Then it's between, depending on the month, China or Japan, and they're both absolutely screwed. And so it's like, having like MC Hammer be your, lender of last resort over here, where, we know that they're bankrupt, and there's absolutely no way that this can continue.
Wait. I would trust MC Hammer any day over the Fed, but or the government or anyone involved.
Maybe because when people are trying to steal his money, he'd be like, don't touch this or something. I don't know. All right,
we'll end this report right there. I think that's where we reach our bottom line. Appreciate it, Tim. Make sure to check those links below, guys, and become a client of Tim's by checking the links below. You can become a client, and he does great work at the Liberty Advisor. And obviously, check all the other links. Join us on Float and all that. Let's go to the chat. Rainy Step sent $2.79 Canadian, $2.79 Canadian in the super chat. Thank you so much, Rainy Step. You're always awesome, and you're always helping us out, and I really appreciate the help that you give. All those super chats go a long way. $2.79 is food on my plate that I can, because it's really bad right now. So again, I really appreciate that. That's awesome. And make sure to press like on this video if you haven't already. Pressing like helps with the algorithm. We got shut down twice in a row today. Once at the beginning, which is the most important part to have at the beginning, because people watching after the show's finished will actually watch it through if it has a good beginning. Second, in the middle